It's normally it's our first meeting of the month. It's normally a work session type night, but we do have public hearings tonight for warrant articles, possible warrant articles for zoning changes that the board is proposing. But I'd like to ask for your indulgence for just a minute, though. This is the 80th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, back in 1941, and just a poignant day. And I ask you if you would join me in just a moment of silence before we get started. Thank you very much. All right, so we don't have any hearings for applications, but as I said, we do have hearings for some proposed zoning changes that the board has been working on, and there are copies at each of your places for each of the items in order that we're going to talk about them. If public does show up, there are copies on the table back there for them as well. So, what we need to do is review each of these one at a time, and if we were to make any substantive changes to any of them, it would mean having to hold a second public hearing, and we can do that. The other thing is that if we don't change the wording and we're still good with it and we want to move forward with it, we would need a motion to bring it forward to town meeting, and we'll do that as we do each one of these. And a question, Glenn, I know that tomorrow's the deadline for citizens petitions. Do you know if any have been received yet?
One was received.
They're being worked on. I don't know if they're here yet.
Oh, okay. Well, tomorrow is the deadline.
Yeah, one was received and sent away for not having the right number of registered voters.
Well, that's kind of a, okay.
So he was informed of that and told that I think Susan found 5 of the 25 that weren't registered voters, so he fell beneath the threshold for submitting it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that other one that's happening, I don't think they're aware that the deadline's tomorrow.
Oh, there's another one happening
today, maybe?
Oh, this is the chicken?
Roosters.
Oh,
my
no,
word.
there was
Oh,
one.
okay. Okay, I you know,
Discuss the ones we haven't got.
I'm sorry I brought it up, especially since the deadline hasn't happened yet. If we do get any citizens petitions, we will be holding a public hearing on those. That's a requirement. And if we do get any, it's not the kind of thing that we have any jurisdiction over. We can't make any changes to it, but we do have to hold a hearing, and we have to vote to either. Actually, the wording is not recommend, but it's something the RSA states the exact wording, and I forget what it is, but we'll deal with that when we get to it. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you.
So we have, Chris, do you know if Peter's going to be?
No idea.
Okay, all right. We do have at least 2 members currently out, and so Steve, you'll be voting. So we have members Steve Padfield, who's an alternate but a voting member tonight, Peter Coffin, Lynn Merrill's our vice chair, Richard Wilson is our selectmen's rep, Glenn Koppelman here, Chris Bashaw, board member, and Glenn Greenwood, our town planner. So we've already done the sort of the preamble to our meeting, and we're going to get into each of the proposed changes. First one is regarding Article 110.6, which is setback language. And this is an amendment to replace existing language with the following, Article 110.6B1. Setbacks for structures, structures for this requirement are as defined in Article Roman 2B17 of the Kingston zoning ordinance. Glenn, do you have any?
Yeah, this is just a response to town council's insecurity about the language that's presently in C3 as conflicting in too major a way with our overall definition of structure, and so he wanted that section changed so that it refers to our overall definition of structure that's found in the definition section.
Okay.
So this would replace that. The only thing I would say is, for clarity, we should say the remainder of Article 2, Section B remains untouched.
Right,
Because
okay.
this
This
is
is-
just the first line, and then there's A, B, C, and D, and those don't change.
Okay.
So
So
it-
this is not substantive, this is just
This is
clarification.
editorial, just so it's clear,
Right,
so
yeah.
it clarifies, right, so I'm adding language here that, that sections, paragraphs A, B, C, and D are unchanged, but remain in place.
Or do you,
Subparagraphs, yeah.
or do you just want to say that the remainder of the
Of the section
remainder of the
remains
article,
unchanged.
remainder of the article remains unchanged?
Yep, I
Or
can
no
say
other
that.
changes.
Or something?
Just simple, so.
Well, except that it says to replace B1 with that wording, and you could go right to B2, having eliminated A, B, C, D. So I think it needs to be very specific, saying that,
A, B, C, and D remain in place.
10.6B, 1, and then say that, 10.6B, 1, A, B, C, D, or subparagraphs A, B, C, D remain unchanged.
It's clearer if we just outline what exactly stays in place.
Whatever words, Glenn,
So
you
that's-
think are
that's-
appropriate
that's how
to
it's gonna read.
to make that clear.
Because otherwise, we'll get a situation we had before.
So we'll trust that you will come up with the right words, Glenn.
Yep, got it, thank you.
And since that's not actually
Right, it's not substantive.
not a change,
related to the
yeah.
change, it has no effect on how we proceed tonight. So are there questions from board? Oh, and I was asked to remind you all that, particularly because we don't have our recording secretary with us to speak clearly, so the mics catch your voices. So we are doing the audio tape, and Adam is broadcasting and I believe taping as well, Adam? Yes, okay. But I was asked to just make sure that you speak up.
So,
And we have a member of the public with us. Wow. Hi, Virginia. So did you get a copy of the, that we're?
Did.
Okay.
Right at the door.
All right, so we're working on the first one,
Okay.
and so any comments from the board? Comments from public?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Well, how would you like to proceed with this one?
we'll move that we, put this, ordinance change forward with the changes that Glenn's gonna add about, disambiguation, to the town meeting.
Okay, motion by Peter Coffin,
Second.
second by Richard Wilson. Discussion? All right, so before I take the vote, just for, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 voting members at the moment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Lynn, did you vote?
I didn't, I was still looking it up.
Oh,
We're just,
I know where we are, I just,
no,
I don't remember.
We're adding,
Right.
language to say that subparagraphs A, B, C, D remain unchanged.
did you hear Glenn's explanation of this?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I haven't any objection. I was just trying to,
From here,
so Article 2B17
Right,
is
those,
in the
that's the
preamble?
definition, that's the definition section, yes.
Right, that's the preamble, that's all I was just checking on. I just wanted to make sure I liked that language. Before I-
before you say, yeah.
Yeah, just saying. Definitions, okay. 17.
Oh, it says running even later, New Boston Road closed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Did you go by?
Lynn, do you want us to hold up on this, or,
Okay. Article 2B, 17, is multifamily dwellings?
It's structures.
Article 2B.
Article 2, wait a minute. B,
2, so it's 3. Two definitions, B definitions, agriculture. 3. So, yes, 17 actually does say multifamily
Yeah.
dwellings. Any building or structure containing more than 2 dwelling units. Structure 21 is the actual number.
I have 17 on the town website.
I have 17 in my book.
Let's take,
I have
look.
21 in my book.
Yeah, I got 21 in my book. Let's go, this was,
On the town
This is
website,
not a
it
good
lists
start.
structure.
what's that?
On the town website, it says structure.
this is
17
dated,
structure.
this particular version is dated 3/10/2020. What does it say in yours?
It says, click here. Official town of Kingston posted ordinances.
No, at the beginning, on page 2-1, it should the top, under preamble 2 definitions, it should say amendment, March 10th, 2015, March
So
14th,
last amendment shows on this is 3/12/2019.
2019.
So
Okay, so
I
that's
I think a bigger problem we have when the public, if they're
You
going
got the
to
wrong one.
access where it is available to everyone, if we do not have the most up-to-date and current stuff, that's a huge problem.
Yeah,
Because in our book, the latest update is 3/10/2020.
Yeah, so.
is that what you have?
My book is 17.
Yeah,
Well,
what's
yeah,
the
but-
date?
But my data is 2019.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you don't have the update. So that is where when we get those from Ellen, they need to get not only down to Susan, but talk down to the
Because I
website.
mean, any member of the community that potentially violates something going off of the
They can
information
go back
that's
and
not
look
up
at
to
it.
date and correct isn't really on them. Or they'd have a darn good
Yeah,
argument
hard
on
to-
why it's not their fault.
Right. So what we have to do is update it on the website.
Yes.
And we have to use the right number. And again, this is editorial, because we're talking about the definition of structures. And that was clear in the notice. So what we have to do is use the right number. If the most recent version says it's 21,
21.
then that's what this should be related to be 21.
And I'm okay with 21.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Just,
And so I guess
Just saying?
That includes swimming pools, yeah.
as just a topic of conversation on the, the structure thing, I have no problem with that definition of structure. My problem has always been the alternate definition of structure under the Aquifer Protection Ordinance,
yeah,
which states it's anything constructed or erected. And you want to talk about a bad neighbor contest? That opens up the door to a very difficult situation for anyone if they wanted to make it one.
Well, one of the things that's coming up in this post-COVID thing is tents.
well, and I thought we had talked about making certain that all the definitions were the same.
Yeah.
So structure in the first definition should be the same, so we should be changing, that as well.
I mean, this says anything constructed or erected except a boundary wall or fence, the use of which requires location on the ground or attachment to something on the ground. Somebody could argue that that picnic table is a structure in the
That's
Aquifer
right.
Protection Ordinance, and you need a permit for it.
Yep.
So that's the one I have a problem with. The one that we're trying to amend and clean up in the other part, not an issue, but it's this other conflicting structure
So can we
definition that I do have an issue with.
have time to change this?
Not tonight.
Not tonight, it would have to be noticed for another
we-
public hearing, but.
No, that's what I'm saying, we
yeah.
can notice this for 2 weeks from now, right?
No, we could
Well-
use it for January, the first week in January.
Because I think Chris has a good point, in that we should have that same definition placed in
Could we,
201.
Just refer to it.
could we amend it like this to essentially say, and also
Yeah,
the definition of structure in the Aquifer Protection Ordinance would also replace the definition in that, or is that because we're going
That's
two
right.
different things, or is it?
Because we're doing it because we wanna send this one through tonight.
Oh, okay,
We really should do that one separately.
okay.
Yeah.
But if we still have time to do that, cause then I think having two conflicting things even out there to fix one and not fix the other, so,
Yeah, the intent was to fix them all,
yes.
so that it was consistency
Yeah,
throughout those.
and you know what, I've always thought about this one, and I don't know why it didn't click before just now, so I apologize for the last minute on that.
Okay.
So Glenn, would you be able to come up with something for us for, can we talk about it? Well, next meeting is a full meeting, we've got 3 public
We
hearings.
do have 3 public hearings.
So, but early in January is the last time to notice for, I don't have the calendar with me.
We really should.
We're gonna be running up
first-
against a time
Yeah,
clock.
we really should
Oh,
be
here it is.
content with finalizing all zoning amendments by that first meeting in January.
Right. So,
So my December 14th, next week, and it's next week, so we couldn't do 2 weeks to notice.
Correct.
We couldn't do it.
You could talk about it, but the notice public hearing would still have to be in January.
But
so,
what Ellen just sent out was, the first public hearing on 10 King Pine Way, the second public hearing was Granite Fields, and then it says withdrawn by on my, when this printed off, this is how it printed off. It said withdrawn by?
That was Summit, right, that was withdrawn because they couldn't be scheduled.
well,
until-
no, that's because they were gonna be doing just the lot line adjustment, and I think they decided, Glenn, that they were gonna do it all together, so they were pulling,
That's correct.
they were pulling the
Okay.
lot, pulling the
So
lot.
Summit has withdrawn,
Right.
Apparently.
so we do have only 2.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
I just,
So,
I couldn't understand what the withdrawn was and
Yeah.
didn't know which one it went with.
well, that project involves a lot line adjustment and a site plan review.
Yeah.
And because they weren't ready for site plan review, they were just gonna do the lot line adjustment, and then, I don't know if it was in consult with Glenn or Ellen, but they've decided to pull that, just the lot line for now, and do it all together.
Okay.
All right, so here's the zoning calendar. So Thursday, January 6th is the last day to post and publish notice for first public hearing of proposed zoning amendments. And then January 17th is the last day to hold the first public hearing.
And that's for an SB2 town?
Yep.
We generally, in town, because of the annual report, want that all finalized before that is saying we can have our second public hearing.
No, not second public hearing. That's the last day to hold the first public hearing is January 17th.
Which is also the last public hearing.
That would be if you're only going to
The
have one
last-
public hearing.
Right.
The last day for final public hearing is January 31st.
Which would be 2 weeks after the 17th if we had to hold.
Right, but we've never been able to hold to that ever because of how we print out the annual reports.
Oh, okay.
So we've always backed off on that. But that being said, if the Board of Selectmen have a different schedule for their annual report, I would love to be able to use the second public hearing if needed.
Last year, it was a month late going out or something. It was real late last year, because we changed companies.
Okay, so what does that mean then for what we're looking to do here to add that?
We're still, this one, we have plenty of time to notice this one for the December 7th hearing, the January 7th hearing.
Right, we can discuss it at
Yeah.
next Tuesday,
Correct.
and then we can notice it for hearing
The first
the first Tuesday.
Tuesday in January.
Okay, fine.
It shouldn't require a second public hearing anyway,
Which is January 4th.
Yeah, I don't think that one, especially
because
if
all
we're
we're
gonna
saying,
potentially attempt to mirror.
all I'm going to say is the new definition in the Aquifer Protection District is gonna be the exact same wording of the definition on number 21,
Yeah,
so that we have the exact same language.
Which is the same language, and that's the language throughout, is what's in 21.
Correct, and I just checked, the wetlands ordinance doesn't have its structure definition,
Yeah.
neither does the shoreline
this was, the
protection.
aquifer protection was the only other place that it existed.
You know, and it probably happened that way because we used a lot of model language.
We
when
I was
did.
gonna say, it was probably hey, this is
it
sample
came-
language
and-
as a
and
package.
we didn't double check to make sure that everything was consistent with other things in the ordinance, so.
Yeah. Yeah, because by itself, you're like, oh, the way that it's, the intent of it probably seemed very reasonable.
Motion to adjourn.
Take a long one.
Did you have to detour a little bit?
Oh, I did.
Oh, man.
Yeah, every time. It's the
What?
second time I've had to detour around.
That's true.
Well, so Robin Duguay has just joined us, so welcome. That brings us to 7 voting members because Steve is filling in tonight for Peter Bakey. So, all right. So believe it or not, we haven't. Oh, we did. We took one vote on the first. Did we do the vote?
Yes.
We did.
Yes.
We did on the first amendment.
So I apologize for jumping that in the last minute, but I'm glad we at least caught it with enough time to fix
Yeah,
it.
we have plenty of time to fix it.
So the definition of structure in the Aquifer Protection Ordinance section, we'll discuss it next week at the 14th, and then we will notice it for public hearing on January 4, you said, Lynn?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so the next one. So Robin, we're on the second bullet item on the agenda,
Okay.
addition to the sign ordinance. So, addition to the sign ordinance, this is Article 303.3B2, grand opening sign package permit. So we're proposing this to be an addition to the sign ordinance.
Correct.
So all of this language would be new,
Would be added into the
would
sign.
be added into the sign ordinance, and it would be there to provide for new businesses that are starting up, to give them an opportunity to do some special kind of signage for a limited amount of time. So I will read it for the record. The section is called Grand Opening Sign Package Permit, and it reads, new Kingston businesses or Kingston businesses that have had a change in ownership qualify for the new grand opening sign package permit. Celebrations of new branch locations must occur only, oops, it's missing some of the letter there. Missing only, it must occur only, so that's editorial, at the new location. A grand opening sign package permit includes up to 2 banners securely attached to the building's facade by all 4 corners, up to 3 forms of temporary signage, i.e. A-frames, wheeled signs, buntings securely attached to the building's facade, pennants, inflatables. All signs permitted under the grand opening sign package permit must be located and displayed on the property of the business for which the permit is issued. No off-site signage is allowed. Any other signage that would not already be allowed under other sections of this sign ordinance is also not permitted with the grand opening sign package. The fee schedule is available at the Selectmen's office, and the duration of the grand opening sign package permit is 30 days. Richard?
2 questions. We're saying no off-site signage?
Yeah, that's what this says.
I know, but that means if put a sign at the end of the Plains advertising grand opening down here is prohibited?
That's exactly what
Is
that
that
says.
what we want?
Yeah, it's
Just
otherwise,
clarifying?
how in the heck are you gonna be able to contain it?
I think so, because one of the problems with allowing off-site signage is they typically get put on what people think are public places
Right,
to put
especially
signs,
in town.
and end up actually being on other people's property.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Now, on the fee schedule is in the Selectmen's office.
Yeah.
We just upgraded our fees effective January 1st. We did not put anything in there for this. Our sign fee says $25 per sign. Now, if it's a
You
temporary
have that.
basis,
Well, there could be a special price for the package.
well,
You can add that- your fee
there
schedule.
should be, and my question is, how do we cover that since we have already done everything, public hearing wise and everything on our fee schedule? Can we roll a fee into this and then,
Well, we don't want it in this because
we
then
don't
it
want
means
it in
that
the
as it
zoning
changes, we'd have to go back to the warrant for making changes.
why not? But it wouldn't it be easier to do that than redo the sign fees?
Well,
we
no,
have to
because
do
yours
one.
doesn't require a town vote.
So yours
But
just
if
has
we
to
put,
be under
if we
public
put a fee
hearing.
in this,
You can put yours
anytime,
up and down.
So I can do an amendment to
Yeah.
just change the sign fee.
exactly.
You would,
Okay,
you would,
all right, I'm fine with that.
you would add a new fee for the packet.
Okay, recommendations on a amount?
Didn't we talk about this at the last meeting? That I was at?
I don't think we talked about it, what the
The amount-
would be.
No, we talked in general, that he brought that business up about the $25 a sign, and obviously that was not,
I think that's unrealistic,
Right.
if somebody puts up 7 or 8 signs
Yeah.
for it.
it would be a single, maybe a $50 per permit, that's what Plastow had, right?
It had, they had $100.
Yeah, okay, and we
We-
thought,
all I
that was
have is, I have that circle and I have removed, and that's
Okay.
what we've done. But
We
I
didn't-
don't know where you wanna go with that, from the
All right,
selectmen
that's
side.
good enough.
That gives
I
them a
think $50 or
ballpark.
$100 is
Yeah,
what they.
Yeah, I think it's too
Don't put
much.
them out of business before they.
I think it's too much to put signs up for 30 days.
Yeah.
We'll see how the others feel.
Yes. Okay, so,
I make a motion, we move this to.
well,
Further on.
anything further on this? And I want to make sure to ask for public comment before we do a vote.
So at this point, it's just the one additional editorial change of the word only, right?
The word only having adding the Y, that's all I had. Did anyone else catch anything that we needed to? Madam, member of the public, any comments?
Not on this one.
Oh
All
my
right.
God, that just
I think it's still waiting on.
lets us know you're here for something.
Well,
Listen,
Obviously.
so far,
she's on a mission.
It seems that way.
All right, okay then, now.
I make a motion, we move this to the warrant
Second.
with the editorial change.
Motion by Lynn, second by Robin. Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Did you abstain?
No, I said yes.
You voted, okay. So that's unanimous. 7 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. All right, the next one relates to food trucks. So the board has been discussing this for the last, oh my gosh, couple of years anyway, off and on. And we, as of this time here, we haven't, we really weren't able to come up with a full package of food truck ordinance, if you will. But we did at least agree to start with creating some definitions and picking some of the zones that we felt were appropriate for allowing the use. And I think that as time goes on, we'll be adding more to this, maybe more meat to it.
And this will take care of the types of issues we've had come to us before for site plan reviews for semi-permanent locating food trucks. The selectmen would deal with the permit process for.
Right. So, these are amendments allowing food trucks as a permitted use, and we're proposing to add the following definitions and renumber accordingly. And this would be in Article Preamble 2 under definitions. 2 definitions to be added. 1, food truck shall mean a mobile food unit as defined by NHDHHS Rule HEP 2300. Quote, a food service establishment mounted on wheels or otherwise designed to be immediately movable, end quote. These units shall be licensed by the state of New Hampshire. And the second definition, mobile food unit, as defined by NHDHHS, Rule H. Pardon?
It's the same thing, it's just a repeat of the one above. It's just to cover those two different.
Oh, it's exactly the
It's
same?
basically saying the food truck is a means of mobile food. There's food trailers, and if we put this ordinance in that just says food truck, somebody comes into the food trailer and says, oh, well, that's it's not trying.
Well, I gotta tell you that that something happened with the text, because the first one is longer than the
It's
second one.
because food truck shall mean a mobile food unit, and then we define
Oh,
mobile food
oh,
unit.
oh,
So
oh.
we just,
All right.
everything there from mobile food unit on is the same as what appears below.
Okay, but for the purposes of the public hearing,
Okay.
I need to read the language, at least I think I should. So, mobile food unit, as defined by NHDHHS Rule HEP 2300, a food service establishment mounted on wheels or otherwise designed to be immediately movable. These units shall be licensed by the state of New Hampshire. And then, we're proposing to amend 4 of the zones to allow food trucks. And the first one would be Article 107, the industrial zone, by adding the following use: 107.1, permitted use, O or 0.
That's O, I think.
That's an O.
I
It's
think
an
it's
O.
M is appears, yeah.
O and food truck. And then to amend Article 108, commercial zone 1, by adding the following use: 108.5, permitted use O, food truck. The fourth one, to amend Article 109, commercial zone 2, by adding the following use: 109.5, permitted use M, food truck. And the fourth one, to amend Article 110, commercial zone 3, by adding the following use: 110.3, permitted use, Roman numeral V, food truck. Questions from the board, discussion about this? As I was reading it, I didn't catch any typos.
No, I was just looking to see if all the letters were matched up and it was so good so far.
Oh, make sure we're using the correct version of the
Correct,
ordinance.
yeah, 'cause-
Yeah,
and, yeah,
good
'cause-
idea. Yeah.
So we're not gonna have any time frame, a food truck can be in one of these zones?
Well, that was the part that we never got to the point of being able to wrap our arms around, and all of the details about where and when and how. So this was about as far as we got this time around.
These are all subject to site plan review on private sites as opposed to street parking, that's gonna be handled by the selectmen. It's not a planning board issue. It's not a site plan review issue, so, and that's why we gave you so many different examples, because there's lots of ways of doing it. Just keep it simple, just say grant permits, or they need to go to you for permits. And then the selectmen can figure out where the places are. It's their problem, not ours.
So, while the board is pondering perhaps other things, Virginia, is this the one you would like to make comment on?
Well, would you like me to?
Come on up, please. Yep. We need to capture your comments on the tape.
I think I've got a bad reputation. She's here, she must want to make trouble or something.
No, it was at my encouragement at HDC that you're here.
It was. So at Historic District Commission last meeting, Glenn said this was going to be brought up, and at that time, I don't think you had decided which zones were going to have permits for food trucks and all. So it looks like the Historic District Commission, the historic districts won't be seeing food trucks at the moment.
Well, we have the what?
Except by special permit through the selectmen, for example, Kingston Days, or like they decide they want a food truck events.
By special permit.
It'd be special permit, and that's not covered here. This
But
is
that's not what this is. So,
Okay.
so if you would like to propose that, that they be an allowed use, in the HDC, either 1, 2, or both, you could propose that to us, and, we have time to make a change and hold an additional public hearing on this one.
Okay, so I would not like to propose that.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
But by special permit is in place at this time, correct?
It's always in
Yes,
place, yeah.
it always has been.
Yep.
So I'm interested to see how this goes in these different zones.
As are we.
So are we.
Yes. So how about the details of saying, how long can you keep your truck there, or where can you park it? Now, you've had that discussion, I'm sure, and I've missed that, but I'm interested in what you.
Case
who
by
decides
case.
that? I'm sorry.
Case by case.
It would be done through site plan
It
review.
would be done through site plan review if they were proposing that it be on a piece of property owned privately.
Okay.
So for instance, the one that we did entertain a site plan review of last year, they were going to use the VFW hall down. And
Okay.
so if somebody proposed something like that, then a full site plan would take place. And at that time, we talk about how long they were gonna be there, what their hours of operation were gonna be, and how many employees they have.
So as you go up 125, you see some coffee stands and so forth, and they have a regular driving, and it may not be paved, I'm not sure, but there's a regular cycle of traffic moving around, and the truck sits there forever, as I suppose it's movable, but it hasn't moved off the site, as opposed to those ones that come by special permit just for an event like Kingston Days. So you, by specific permit, I could say I'd like to leave my truck here forever. until I
No, that
move
wouldn't be a
it.
special permit, it would be a site plan review.
It would be site plan review,
On
not
private
the
property.
select.
Yeah, and
So it would come to you as the planning board.
Yeah, would,
special permit would be limited.
Yeah, that's right, I'm sorry.
But see, they wouldn't be able to do that in plans, because it's not a zone that we permit them to
and by,
Yet.
and by having it permitted in the 3 commercial zones and the industrial zone, it lends itself well to, if the activity's happening, it needs site plan review, because that's what happens in those zones, so, for review purposes.
Well, I don't think I have any other questions. No, I don't think so, because your site plan review would do all those details when someone made an application to have their food truck there.
And the way this is written, if it passes, since the historic district is not included, then we as the planning board wouldn't see applications for food trucks in HD. That would only happen through select board, through special permitting.
Okay,
So
that's what I wanted to know.
this means that in retirement, you and Bob aren't thinking about a food truck?
I have so many grandchildren, I think my house is a food truck.
Oh,
You're gonna have a food boat.
Oh, yes, we will.
food road.
Good use for that. Thank you very much.
thanks, Virginia. Okay,
I make the motion, we move this article forward
to the warrant.
to warrant.
Second that.
Motion by Lynn, I'm gonna take Robin as the second,
Yep.
just to sort of mix things up here. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. 7 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. Okay, the next one is regarding the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. And this is to add language to the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, otherwise known as ADU, which is Article 206, and then renumber as needed. So, proposal is to add the following language to the existing language, and this is in Article 206.4D. When the ADU is contained in a detached structure, new or existing, it shall have the appearance of an accessory use, for example, a garage or barn. Thereby maintaining the appearance of a single-family property. In no case shall it look like a second dwelling unit. And then Article 206.4M. the owner shall, as part of their application to the planning board for a detached ADU, or one that alters the footprint and or appearance of the primary dwelling unit, provide a visual rendering or other graphic representation of what the structure will look like once the ADU is completed. So both of these are just, they don't change the ordinance, but they further clarify what the intent is and what the board is looking for. So
And then Mary,
the first one, clarifying that when this is all said and done, it's still supposed to look like a single family property. And the second one, adding the requirement for graphic representation, that's already in the application, but it wasn't in our ordinance. So this sort of makes the two more consistent. So discussion on this one?
I guess I would just say that I just have concerns with it because I think that language is so subjective that it's really going to depend on who sits on the board at the time, and then you're going to have conflict. It depends on the individual opinions of the board of what they are going to determine. There's nothing specific in that language.
Well, and I've got to tell you.
And I know you have a personal
I agree with you.
example.
I agree with you, and if I had my druthers, I would be making a proposal, and I didn't do it, but I would much prefer now to see that to see us not allow detached dwelling units, because I think it's just fraught with.
But I think by the state's definition, you can't.
No, you don't have
disallow.
Detached.
You can't.
Detached is an option.
Yeah, the state.
You have
the
to
state
allow
law
ADUs.
You can't.
Yeah.
As internal ADU. The detached is an option, and we as a board proposed it to the town, and it was voted in that we wanted to allow the flexibility of detached. After what I'm just gone through, I believe it's a mistake. Not to mention the fact that we had one built on Madison Ave that,
Looks just like a house.
But that
It is a house.
it is a house.
And
That was before the ordinance.
no, it wasn't, but it,
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
oh, no, before the detached?
No.
It still shouldn't be there, but anyway, I think, but I think you're right, the subjectivity,
And I think because one person's going to get one answer from a board, then somebody building exact same thing is going to get a different answer, and guess who's going to be paying the legal bills? The town.
Well, I just think that this at least clarifies it a little bit more than what's, I think that can happen right now,
Yeah.
and this just
I mean,
clarifies it a
it
little
says
more.
We already have the discussion right now, which is why we
Mhm.
make that requirement. And, so I don't see anything wrong with it. And the answer is that you have 7 board members, and, if it's so weighty that it's gonna be a 4-3 vote as to whether it looks like a house.
I mean, that's the thing is, I think I understand the intent of it, but I just see it as being, it's just going to depend on the opinion of the people that happen to be there that night or whatever.
You'd have to have people deliberately ignoring something. You can tell the difference between what looks like a garage or barn or a carriage house or whatever, and what looks like a house. I think that's not really ambiguous, and I think that apart from intentional fraud, you have a tough time convincing 7 people to ignore something that looks like.
And I can see there are times where it might be more aesthetically pleasing to have a detached accessory dwelling unit that has more house-like features than somebody saying, well, for cost of savings, I'm just going to make a gigantic steel box like that looks like a commercial warehouse that they can say, well, that's my ADU garage.
This is a single-family residential, so that's muster for them.
For a garage, how can you tell people what a garage looks like in single-family residential?
Yeah, go look out on
We've certainly, there are a number of ADUs over garages now,
Yeah.
the detached garages now. It's pretty hard.
Yeah, I personally would never want to eliminate the detached option for folks. because especially for people that already own garages or barns, so it's much more
Exactly.
cost.
I have a nice one down at Lane's, built a number of years ago. It looks like it goes with the houses. It looks like a carriage house
Yeah.
on the cross beams and
Yeah.
stuff. It's a good example of what the intent was.
I think the state's gonna jump into this in the next year.
Yeah.
Really? We
Yeah.
haven't seen anything of that.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of things going on because they're considering it 2 residents on 1 structure and the septic issue and how many people you can put in one and everything else. The state's getting involved in it.
Yeah, they already upped it from 1, we could limit it to 1 bedroom, and now it's, you can't limit it to anything less than 2 bedrooms.
So the state's wanting to do the opposite. They're trying to say that every detached unit should be at least 2 bedrooms of septic.
Oh,
Because,
septic, yeah.
which means if you have a 4-bedroom house and a 2-bedroom garage, you can have a 6-bedroom septic.
Which means 12 people can live there, because they
Yeah.
figure every bedroom is 2 people.
Yeah, and so, like I said, my concern isn't necessarily the intent is faulted. I just wanted to state I anticipate issues.
We already have.
We already have one, but as Lynn or Peter said, it isn't changing the ordinance. Hopefully it's making it a little clearer so that when people are sitting and trying to make a judgment, they'll have a little bit more to go by maybe.
Yeah.
So,
And this is one of the reasons it was moved from the ZBA. Actually, yeah, from the ZBA, which basically said that the building inspector had that authority, because all the ZBA does is approve it in accordance with the criteria, all those criteria that listed. And it was Robert's duty to make sure that the plans that were brought met those, and it was the 1/3 requirement, and it was really putting too much on the building inspector to tell him that he had to make a judgment call on whether the thing looked like a second living quarters or a garage or not. So that's kind of why the whole shift over when we modified it to the planning board, so that we could come in and look at plans, analyze that. Took it off Robert's door.
is there any public comment on this one? Virginia? Oh. Come on up, but don't start speaking.
I agree, I think.
Oh, stop, hold it.
I thought you wanted me to sit down.
Well, now you have to decide whether you still agree when the tape starts again.
Okay, now,
So I agree that sentence is very ambiguous, and we're pretty specific on what you can and can't do in the historic district, and they still push the boundaries, and it still makes for some really tough decisions. It was hard for me to hear what you were saying
Okay.
about why you think this will work, and I would like to hear that.
Oh, I think it will work because it requires the entire board to review plans, look at graphic descriptions or representations of what the ADU will look like when it's done, and then say, does this meet the intent of the ordinance? Does it look like a barn, carriage house, garage, whatever, or does it look like a second house? And I think that any 7 people can reasonably, the majority can make that decision correctly. As long as they're given an accurate representation of what it's gonna look like.
If the state says that a detached unit could be an ADU, then we must agree to that. We can't be more restrictive than the state.
no, we can't.
We
Well,
can.
first of all, the state law requires, I forget how it's phrased, but a community that has residential zones has to allow for or make accommodations for accessory dwelling units. And there are certain stipulations spelled out in the RSA.
Yes, yes.
And the basic RSA is for an ADU contained within the primary building.
Yes.
The RSA has a provision to allow a community to also allow for detached
Yes.
ADUs. It's not a requirement, but a lot of towns do allow them, and we do. But we don't have to.
Right. So if someone, I'm thinking that you would not like to prohibit someone who had a separate building, a garage or whatever, that could be turned into a dwelling unit, they already had some such thing, then they could use it. But could we restrict the building of a new one if it doesn't already exist?
Well, we talked about that, and actually, one of the towns that I work closely with did just that, restricted detached ADUs to existing accessory buildings. And they gave a whole separate set of examples and actual pictures of the types of things that they are looking for. So they gave design guidelines to go along with it, but they limited it to existing structures. But when we talked about that here, it was said, oh well, if it isn't existing now, I could build it this year, and then I could come in next year and it's already existing, and therefore then I can get my detached.
Or in the planning, like I know if I was going to do something like that, I would rather build a garage and then put an ADU above it, not try to cram it somewhere into my existing dwelling. And I know my thoughts of how I would do it, it would actually look much better than trying to jam on an addition to the house.
Not only that, but if somebody has 10 acres and wants to build a secondary unit, you can't really stop them. I mean, think of houses everywhere that have, a guest house.
Well, a guest house is different than a dwelling unit. At any
Some
rate.
guests stay a long time.
Yes, that's true. Then, I would recommend that the planning board go ahead and work on some design guidelines, as you're saying, whatever towns you're looking at you have design guidelines for things that people can do in the Historic District Commission, and it really helps. They're guidelines, so they're not law, but it certainly helps so that you don't get into a mess about which looks like something brand new as a house and which looks like either a garage or a barn. I think that would be something really valuable to work on.
And that's something I believe, Glenn will correct me if I'm wrong, but if we were to add design guidelines, that would be under the, it's in the ordinance, it's not in the regs. So it would be attached to the ordinance.
I mean,
Well,
If you do good.
there is no real easy way to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, and just for me too, like I said, I was just bringing my concerns about some of the ambiguity in it, but like my thing has always been, I want to allow more freedom. I mean, there is a very good reason I do not live in an HOA or the HDC, because there are certain things that I want to be able to do with my home and my property that I wouldn't be allowed to do in those. So any type of provision that covers the whole town, I am usually very much against, because some people want more freedom of autonomy of their property, because let's face it, my biggest bill I have is my property taxes in addition to my mortgage.
yep. Well, I mean, if it's all right with the board, I can certainly refer Glenn to some of the design guidelines that I'm aware of, and with pictures and stuff, and just as an FYI, and I mean, we can talk about it at some future time.
I think that's something to think about in March or April.
Yeah, once we get past the next town meeting.
So may I ask a question about design guidelines connected to an ordinance? Is that more complicated than connecting it to a regulation?
If you're gonna connect it to the ordinance, it's gonna go before town meeting vote.
And the guidelines?
Guidelines too.
And that's where we have them, I don't know.
And they're
yeah.
mandatory, they're sort of mandatory, they're hard to, they don't have the flexibility.
Yeah, I would be very much opposed to attaching guidelines to an ordinance. I wouldn't vote for any shape or form. I'm okay with it being in regulations because there is flexibility, but I'd be, not only would I not support it, I'd be very much against it if it was attached to an ordinance.
I didn't realize that there was a difference when you had guidelines. I didn't realize if they were attached to an ordinance, they were mandatory.
Yeah.
Thank you. No idea.
I mean, the town, we could structure them, you could still structure a set of guidelines, as long as you didn't mention them in your ordinance, and they could be something that could be handed out as voluntary,
Suggestions.
suggestions.
If you want to get approval, this.
But why do that? Let them tell us what they want to do and let us make a decision. I mean, the state I was gonna print out these sheets about septic. State said, absolutely not. People get paid to design those. Your job is just to say yes or no or make suggestions after they do it. And that's kind of the same thing we're looking at here, is if we put up guidelines that may totally render or change what they wanna do.
I mean, there are,
If somebody
I've
wants to
seen-
make a good enough argument, we should approve it. I mean, if they've got the grounds to make that argument.
And I think we should just see how this does.
Yeah.
We know we had a few issues, you know, some concerns with the previous wording. This makes it a little bit tighter, a little bit better understanding. Let's see what this does.
That's all the trouble I'm gonna cause tonight.
Good
So
saying,
you
so
say,
there's still time.
does that mean you're leaving right now, or does that mean you're going back to that chair?
Well, I'm just gonna look at the agenda for a minute and then see.
You've already made our meeting 30 minutes longer.
But that's going to
Okay.
Blame it on Glenn, he encouraged me to come.
Yes, it is my fault, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for
It's
doing
nice
it.
to see somebody else here.
Okay, so,
Motion to move it forward.
did we do that already?
That we did.
You have
No,
not.
we did not.
Okay, so,
Second.
motion by Richard, second by Lynn. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. So, 6 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention.
It's just because I'm not necessarily opposed to it, I just, I don't know,
That's fine.
don't know how I feel about it.
That's fine.
You didn't go to the training that said it's your duty to make a decision and not to abstain.
Unless I can articulate why.
So that one will go to warrant in March, and the final one is
Natural screening.
amendment to add the following language to natural screening. And I'm assuming this is related to the
This is in the innovative zone.
innovative zoning ordinance, and it, okay, and with regard to setback from the road. So it's Article 204.2 C1, small c. Could somebody check that while, Peter, are you doing that?
Yeah.
Make sure we're in the right,
C
in the right pew here.
1.
So the
small c
language,
in natural screening.
the language is, this is new, this would be new language, right, Glenn?
Yes.
Yes, it's added to the end. After.
Project-related drainage and stormwater management treatment devices, if predominantly natural in appearance, may be constructed within the external setback. Now, is the external setback just on the front, or is it all,
It's all the way around.
it's all the way around? Okay.
And presently, you wouldn't be able to place a stormwater management treatment in that setback.
Right.
And that was one of the reasons that Falzone changed his proposal on Marshall Road from an innovative to a
To
conventional.
frontage lots. Yeah.
Because it's current 200 feet in the front and 100 feet sides and rear.
Peter, is it in the right,
It's
the right section?
It's the right section. There's a paragraph in there, and it would be added to the right after Kingston Road. It would follow that paragraph.
Okay. Questions from the board or more discussion about this? Is everybody clear about what we're doing? Is there a motion? Please?
Yes.
Motion by Richard to move this to the warrant,
Second.
second by Peter Coffin. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Abstentions? And that one is unanimous. Oh, I didn't ask for public comment, but you would have been up here if you wanted to say something, right? Okay.
And Glenn, you're comfortable with the fact that that's going to be added at the end of that paragraph,
Yes, yeah.
not be creating a new paragraph? Okay.
Correct.
I want to make sure that's absolutely clear. We're not taking that paragraph out and replacing it with this one.
So, just in carrying through, as you know, last year, every time we had a hearing, I made a list of things that we might want to think about talking about. The impervious surface, we had talked about. we felt we didn't need an article for impervious surface. Allowing, porous pavement, we said we weren't gonna need anything on that because we could make the exception to do that. The setbacks we just did, structure definitions. The one thing that I don't remember, the decision we made, was on the wetlands ordinance, replacing land with wetlands as they did for the distribution center, and they were purchasing the property in South Kingston,
Oh, the mitigation?
the mitigation.
Yeah, so-
We didn't do anything about that. Is that something we need to do something about? I don't remember our decision on that and why we decided not to move forward with it. I noticed it's not here.
The question, what was what were the changes proposed that?
I think one of them was
stay
that
within
it,
town or?
that it be within the town.
Town.
Or within the watershed.
Yeah. Well, within the town, I think we had said. But is that something, I mean, it's something
Yeah,
that,
because quite frankly, I don't think getting a thermal pool in Colebrook is gonna solve the problems created by
But
filling
the
them in here.
state prioritizes and they want them in town.
They do.
try
The
to-
state looks to the local conservation commission for sites first.
so, but my question was, do we need to put something in the ordinance that would allow that to happen?
Well,
Give
that's a
somebody-
state program.
It's- okay, so
The
it-
ON program is a state program attached to a dredge and fill permit, so.
So that's why we
have
did
no-
that.
We
Okay.
have no say on that anyway.
Okay, that was my, I just couldn't remember why we decided not to move forward with verbiage on that. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have a couple more things to do. One of them is correspondence, and there are a couple of things in here. One is a carryover we've left in the folder, and do you have any update for us on that? Bye, Virginia. Do you have any
Couple updates.
update on the lighting for the self-storage?
We're having a inspectors meeting Thursday. We haven't had one since that meeting because of all the holidays, but we're supposed to be purchasing a light meter. Also, I talked to Tom today because he's never gotten any specs on the lights. And one thing he said is that to be night compliant, they don't have to have shields on them. That everybody's under the assumption they have to have shields, and that is not true. And he showed me some examples of ones that are, you know, lights that say night compliant, but do not have shields, so.
Right, but it's in our ordinance that we said you can't have correct,
No, it says you must meet the night compliance, dark sky compliance.
right.
Doesn't say it has to be shielded.
To the book.
I thought I had something to say about,
Really that's my job.
Outdoor lighting, Article 302.
And there's nothing regarding internal lights other than the fact that ordinance says they can't carry over the property line.
Right.
And I still say on that site, the internal lights are causing more issue than the external lights.
says to protect light-sensitive wildlife habitats, artificial lighting in or on the property periphery of these areas shall be minimized and fully shielded to prevent any emission above the horizontal plane through the lowest light-emitting part of the luminaire.
There you go. That's it. Fully shielded.
Well, that's a bad statement because night compliant lights are not shielded. So, or don't have to be. So that's a bad requirement that you're making people buy a shielded light to meet an ordinance that another light will do with no problem.
Well, the reason for the ordinance is to keep the amount of light down.
But if the federal government certifies something as being night compliant,
Well, that,
I think that's an issue, but I don't have to enforce it, so, at least not to this point, but I mean, every street you drive down, you can see lights that are,
Oh, there's some bad ones, but that doesn't make them right.
oh no, I realize that, meter up, you know.
I think
I put up with
It would
this
be-
every day.
it would be one thing if, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, are we saying two things in here? Are we saying that they need to meet, night sky compliance? Or are we specifying that it needs to be shielded with no light above the horizontal plane?
that night sky compliant lighting required that lighting did not go above the vertical plane,
Horizontal.
the horizontal plane, which means I don't know how you do that unless your light is shielded.
Right.
Because lights point
Because-
down. You know, every light he showed me was on a down, like a 45-degree angle down. So it
It's
didn't
also-
require a shield. It's not like when it's flush mount like this, it needs a shield to point it down.
Do we know how many
Lumens.
lumens
Yeah, it
the
says-
lights are?
Well, that's why we're getting a meter.
Well, because it says more than 1,800
Because
lumens,
then-
but the fixture itself with the lamp should tell you, actually, the bulb, whatever's.
But that's not the issue. The issue is what is it at the property line?
Well, actually, it says any luminaire emitting more than 1,800 lumens, 1,700 being the typical output of 100 watt.
So if it's less than that,
shall
then
be
it
fully
doesn't
shielded
shield.
so as to produce no light above a horizontal plane. So if our ordinance, this has nothing to do with night sky compliance, except
It does say such fixtures usually are labeled dark sky certified or compliant.
usually are labeled.
And I'll tell you, I get more,
Which is much different than they all need to be shielded.
probably 80% of the complaints on this are from committee members and not public.
Reasons why I don't live in certain restricted areas.
It's really interesting now when you drive past new construction. And it used to be that when they had the garage lights, they'd have spotlights outside that would go down, but they would do a larger area. Now they seem to have lights almost built in that go directly down.
Right.
You know, 2 or 3, one in front of each bay. You know, very different, but they don't have shields on them. They just sort of
No,
point
it's
it
they're
down.
pointing down.
As long as they're
Here's-
pointing down and the light isn't going above the horizontal plane, then they don't have, like some of the street lights that are, or some of the parking lot lights that are the new LED fixtures.
Yeah.
They don't have shields on them, but they're flat
Right.
and pointing down.
And we just spent a fortune to do all the new LED lights, and we've gotten a lot more complaints since we did that
Well, yeah.
before.
Why?
Because they say
they're
the
bright.
lights are shining in their rooms and stuff where they didn't before.
They're brighter.
Because it's pointing down and they're brighter.
So, I mean, if anybody really is interested to see a project in Kingston that complies with the ordinance and keeps the light level down, check out All American Assisted Living. They really did a nice job in using the correct fixtures.
And there's one thing about the fixtures, if you don't mount them right, if you take a night compliant fixture that's stamped under night sky compliant, and you aim it up, it's no longer that, it's not
Very
just the
good,
fixture.
Peter.
So that's why we have this written in here about the horizontal plane. And so.
Right, I'm fine with horizontal plane, I'm anti the shield. I'm saying it doesn't have to have the shield to be nighttime compliant.
So we could easily just find out how many lumens these lights emit and then.
Okay.
So just question though, and the one where it talks about the fully shielded, that says specific to light sensitive wildlife habits.
No, we're on 302.4.
It's in another section.
Oh, okay.
also, Chris.
Yeah, I'm in 302.4F.
That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I saw too.
that's what I looked at first, and then I looked back here, and it shall be fully shielded, and that's anything more than 1,800 lumens. The other one doesn't
Peter,
have
what, give Chris the-
302.4A, any luminaire emitting more than 1,800 lumens.
Oh.
Tells you what that is.
Once we get a meter, a lot of this will
Yeah,
be under control.
all right, so we'll get a further update from you, okay. All right, now we'll leave this in the correspondence folder for now. Okay, so, Glenn, this is the one, the next item is the one on 9 Main Street.
Yes.
You want me to read this letter?
I think that would be helpful, thank you.
All right, we'll start with that. Dated December 1, addressed to this board. It says, "We are in the process of purchasing the property at 9 Main Street in Kingston. This can also be located on tax map R21 lot 10. Is everyone familiar with the property we're talking
The
about?
Safeway bus.
Correct, and then, the Durham Bus Company.
Right, Safeway, then Durham, at the intersection of where 111, the 111 goes off to Salem, to the high school. The police station is right there.
Exactly.
This letter is to inquire if a full site plan is required or not for the following to be approved. We would like to adjust the operating hours to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It doesn't say the days, but I'm assuming it means 7 days. But we would like to enclose the current structure on the property with overhead doors. We would also like to add downward facing lighting as well as security cameras. There will be no adjustment to the footprint of the current structures. We have received approval from the Zoning Board of Adjustment for a variance to Article 104, Section 104.4, property use, to include an overhead garage door business and self-storage units. Should you have any questions or would like to discuss further, please do not hesitate to contact me. Best regards, Matt Francis, Aloha Overhead Doors, and it gives the phone number and the email address. So, I mean, this is clearly a change of use as well as a change to some of the structures.
Correct.
It also doesn't have, normally when it's just a letter for change of tenant, it doesn't include all the questions that we usually want to have answered.
But it's more than just a change of tenant.
I understand
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but at the
But
bare
this-
minimum, we usually, for a change of tenant, we're looking for a number of employees, you know, the parking, the whole.
Yeah, but they're saying that they would either do a partial or full, and
Yeah, they
They
understand the
haven't
site plan
submitted
review is
information.
required. Their main concern is whether or not a newly surveyed plan is what is being requested by the planning board,
As opposed to,
as opposed to using the existing, site plan
and maybe just
On
marking,
file.
maybe just marking it up.
and marking it up and doing an affidavit that would say what was being amended to that plan.
Okay.
Is this facilities fenced? I mean, they're talking about self-storage units as well.
Well, it's fenced up front. There's a fence that you drive through.
But not on the highway side.
Correct, there is no entryway on the highway side.
But it's not fenced either, you can walk through and get
Yeah,
to
you
it.
can walk through.
Yeah, that's where you park the bus with the banners on it.
Yeah, that, there, exactly.
that wouldn't be part of the site.
noticed
I'm
that.
pretty sure.
So,
They get a permit package.
okay, so, I mean, I have my own thoughts, but Glenn, do you have a recommendation?
Do I have a recommendation?
Or would you rather us just chat about it?
No, I'm not opposed to saying that I think that the site plan that we have for that property is a fairly detailed plan of what the site looks like. And I see these changes as being, associated with what is a definite change of use of the property, although I think a lesser intense use of the property from what it has previously been.
Compared to 12 or 16 buses starting in early morning hours.
Yeah.
And the noise of the employees going and coming and.
Is the,
And they did fleet maintenance there as well.
Right.
I mean, it was a full-bodied industrial site, the last user of that site.
is that user now gone? Is the site vacant?
I believe so.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe so. I think that the degree of interest that was spurred by this because of its selling price, which still seems high to me.
I didn't realize.
I think they had to clean it up some to make people see what its potential is.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the pleasure of the board, and we ought to do this by, motion?
Yeah, it would be helpful.
I would suggest that the plans, if they're looking just to get out of having an engineer draw a whole new survey, I think the plans that I saw, at least, were sufficiently detailed, as you said, to allow those to be modified site plan review based around the operating hours and the type of operations and all the rest of it. And yeah, and the changes to that, the lean-to structure. So, but that's not gonna show up in an overhead drawing.
Our administrator should work with him to write a more detailed letter.
Well, I think.
No, the question is,
Yeah,
do we require a full site plan review with newly engineered plans, or a site plan review using the existing plan and just having a paper markup and doing an affidavit that would then be recorded at the registry of deeds?
Attached to that.
I'll make a
site.
motion that we allow the existing site plan to govern the property with alterations according.
So the motion is for the lesser of the
Yes.
requirements.
Right. I would say not the existing site plan, but, the plans, the drawings.
It is the existing site plan.
Yeah, well, the existing site plan, I assume the site plan has all the notes and, uses and everything else. And
That's what it is until he alters them.
Oh, I see what you're saying, so altering the existing site plan to, yeah, okay, I'll say.
But you, just to be clear, by doing that, I think the intent would be not to do a Mylar, not to do a new Mylar.
Correct.
All right.
Correct. It would mean that there would be an affidavit recorded at the registry that would be attached to the existing recorded plan.
So don't we have rules or regulations or something that
Yeah,
say,
from,
you can, if a plan can be modified once, but not more than once? Something like that? You can-
That's for a
That's really if
minimal,
you're going to
Yeah,
do,
that's for-
minor, what's it called?
Expedited.
it's an expedited site plan.
Expedited site plan.
And it's when you plan on changing the footprint, because
Okay.
you have an allowance that it can't be greater than 1,500 square feet ever,
Yeah,
but it's not supposed to be 7.5% larger than the existing footprint.
okay.
And you can do that twice, correct?
You can do that twice.
So the footprint isn't changing, but
Okay.
the use is. So we have a motion by Richard.
Second by Peter, right?
yeah, I seconded it, under the other, when you explained it, that's.
All right, then is
The
there
basics.
further discussion? Call for the vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm opposed, any abstentions? So motion carries
Could we,
6.
before we finish that up, could you just explain why you're opposed?
Oh, I can. I think that, we're talking about a change of use. Granted, it might end up being a less intensive use, but there's probably gonna be fencing, because of the self-storage facility. There will undoubtedly be signage. It probably won't be a banner on the van, but, and making significant modifications to that, to the building structure that's there. I don't know, I would be more comfortable with a new site plan. All right, so the motion carried, 6 in favor, 1 opposed, and no abstentions. And minutes of November 2nd.
We got one more thing here.
Well, I'm working toward that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one concern.
But that's not just, we have one more thing beyond that, so. Because we have to finish up the discussion that our town clerk, tax collector came to us with at our last meeting. We need to come to a decision on that.
Right, and
Because we,
which was actually in these 7 minutes, which I'll move to be approved the November 2nd minutes, is that what you,
November 2nd minutes, yes.
Yes.
Second.
All right, motion by Peter, second by Lynn, to approve November 2nd minutes as written.
Yeah, I didn't see anything in there
Are there any corrections or adjustments to those minutes that people noticed, or wish to bring forward? All in favor say aye. Aye, opposed, abstentions? All right, motion carries unanimously on that. All right, we we have two more things. Richard, you want to do?
No, that's Glenn's, he can do it.
Well, no, but we'll do this one
Oh.
next, and then we'll do the other
That's
thing as the final. Okay,
What are we doing?
this.
Oh, so this, we never really resolved, the proposed changes for, expanding the allowances in the zoning ordinance for multifamily dwelling units in, the C1 commercial zone. And so this proposal would change 3 areas. It would change what is a really restrictive, limiting feature that, the structures can't have more than 8 dwelling units in them. And it would expand it to be 24 dwelling units in any single multifamily structure.
That's per building, right?
That would be per
Okay.
building.
It doesn't say that, that should probably be added.
Oh, we can add that.
Dwellings, not that more than 24
It
dwellings.
says dwelling units, which,
So it should say a multifamily
Dwellings.
structure.
Dwelling structure.
Structure
yeah.
shall not have more than 24
Yeah.
dwelling units. And then, in addition to that, there's a restriction that a multifamily development shall not have more than 100 dwelling units.
I have a question for that. What if they've got 1,000 acres? I mean, you're putting a restriction on something that you're not basing it on any size or any justification.
Nobody in Kingston has 1,000 acres.
No,
But I understand your
but my
point.
point
I
is
understand
you're
your
already
point.
limiting how many can be on it per
Yeah, they
acre.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
You're already limiting how many units you can have per acre, so why add that? I don't think you need that.
Yeah, there are more than 1,000 acres of available land in town.
In one location.
Yep.
One owner has more than 1,000 acres. Is that true?
Is it for sale?
Yeah, for a price.
Depends on if this passes.
Seriously? One person with more than 1,000 acres in Kingston?
There's a couple different.
Contiguous parcels?
Okay,
No,
back to
the
this.
parcels are not contiguous, they
Oh.
actually are separate parcels, but there is 1,000 acres in each of, plus in each of the parcels.
Wow.
So Glenn, I don't know that you need that second sentence is my point, because in the next part, you're limiting it to 4 bedrooms per acre. So why limit it twice? Why limit
Yeah,
it
I hear what you're saying.
to
I
the
hear what
number of
you're saying.
units when you don't know how big the site will
Right,
be?
we don't know how,
Yeah,
because we say it has to be larger than 10 acres, but it could be
Right.
one of these 1,000-acre ones, in which case they could easily go over 100 units.
so I would just
Or they
say,
could subdivide their land so that they could do
Bingo.
100-unit parcels.
well, that's my point, is that,
That's what I'm thinking.
100-acre parcels.
You also have, number 5, density says, shall not be greater than 4 or 6
Oh,
buildings.
no, it's 4.
Yeah, well, I know that you
Determines.
changed it on that place, but in the upper place, you just wanted to delete the or 6 in the line
Yes.
above there, or 2 lines above there.
Thank you. So I have no problem with taking out that second line on number 4.
okay,
So,
And so the current restriction for multi-unit dwellings is 8 units.
8 units. Is it a surprise we've never seen a proposal?
Well, I guess this is one of these times where I feel, I'm gonna interject my personal opinion, I'll just never support or advocate for allowing giant apartment buildings in the community of Kingston. Both personally and professionally, I see the resources it consumes and, as opposed to adding to the tax base, and I'm not an advocate of giant apartment buildings.
so now you can't sit on any board that hears one because you've already stated your opinion against it?
No, I won't advocate for implementing it into an ordinance.
Oh,
This is the time where our personal opinion is allowed to come
I
out.
thought you were
When
saying.
it
I
comes
thought
to
you said you
proposing
would never
rules,
support
no,
such a-
if the town votes it in and it becomes an allowable use, and then I openly say I would never vote to allow one that's
Right.
legally allowable, I wouldn't be allowed to sit. But I'm saying I would never advocate
To change the
for supporting the creation of it being an allowable use.
And I think I would probably agree with that unless it was under the right condition.
I think it all depends on how they're built, how they're structured,
Where,
they are, what they look like. You know, are they townhouse style? Are they, more apartment house style? There's a lot of things that come into play where you can, there are certain places around where you can actually find units that are looking really, really nice.
yeah, we don't want, like they have in Seabrook on the way in there.
Right.
We don't
For
want
me,
something like
it's
that.
not necessarily aesthetics,
Density?
it's unintended consequences in density and consumption of resources.
Job
for the
security.
rest of the town. Exactly. And I've left communities with that job security.
So this is only for developments in C1.
Right,
Correct.
Okay. And C1, for my reference, is,
Depot Road and 125.
okay,
Yeah. Which is where we had
It's
the
the only place
proposal come in
proposal came
before,
in,
yeah.
and they, with a really nice way, they had, single-family detached condos, they had duplex-style condos, and then they had townhouse-style condos, but they couldn't move forward because of the density.
Yeah,
For
I
me,
thought-
for a density, when we require 2 acres to new construction on non-aquifer protection overlay, and then we require 3 acres in aquifer protection overlay, I mean, it just seems like, to me, it appears to be a gross deviation of density for maximizing profit. Don't get me wrong, if I was a person who
Well,
owned
in my
that type of
response-
land and could put that in and was looking at it from a financial standpoint,
But I think it's more than that, I think it's the fact that there's a housing shortage and there needs to be housing for people of all types and ages and
diversity.
absolutely, all types of demographic diversity. And without having density, that's impossible to do. You just can't make anything affordable for anyone without density. Unfortunately, it's just the name of the game.
accessory dwelling units.
Okay, other thoughts?
Yeah, number 6. Would you explain that?
Yeah,
Well, that's in our present
But
ordinance.
it sounds like you wrote it backwards. If I'm reading this right, it says not more than 50% of the dwelling units.
Not more than 50%, so it can only be half or less,
Can be affordable, yeah.
can be required to be workforce housing units.
And what that does is it allows you to charge market rate for some,
Right, I
to
realize
allow
that, but-
others to
But
be.
I think the question is, what is the
If it says not
requirement?
more than, it could be 0. Right?
You're saying you can't require more than 50%, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yeah, that's not how it's
But-
written, no.
I think,
This
It's
is
not
saying
more than-
not more than
Not more than
50%
shall be,
shall be workforce housing as defined by state law.
so 0%, yeah.
So
seems like it should say something like at least 10% have to be workforce housing. Sounds like it's being said backwards, but I'm just,
But with innovative zoning, a certain percentage was supposed to be
right.
one bedroom to make them affordable. Remember, they had to be one unit with 4,
We had one fourplex unit
yes,
for many
Quad, the
years.
quad.
yes.
But that went by the wayside.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
I mean, this is the present language.
Okay.
If we want it changed, this is the time to change it.
Well, I think going back to what Chris always says, this could take a lot of judgment on how you, somebody could say, you don't have to do any, or you have to do 50%.
No, that's right, you don't have to do any.
I know.
But you
then-
can't,
are we- But
you
it
can't
sounds
have
like
more
we're
than
leaving it up
50%.
to the board to decide and not the developer.
Yeah, why can't?
Well, it's up to the developer to decide what mix they.
50%, they're,
Yeah, the developer has the option of accepting, special financing and such in order to have affordable units.
All right, I guess that's the point, is the financing, because I was thinking if I was a developer,
Why would you do it?
why would I do any workforce housing if I can charge twice as much for rent and get it?
Right, if they're looking for things like low-income housing tax credits and that kind of thing, they have to have a certain
Yeah.
percentage, and so that's their incentive.
Okay.
And this just ensures that that no workforce housing development would be more than half
Right,
workforce housing.
Because then we'd have to have a wing of jail cells in it too.
That is so rude.
we're on TV here.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just going back to what Chris said about
I didn't say that.
John screwed it.
I am very careful in what I say.
Okay, I'm gonna stop this before we get into any more trouble.
Thank you.
Um,
I'll make these changes and this will,
And
we were gonna talk about it next
We'll
week.
talk about it next week, and then
And
we
that
can
would-
decide to bring it to public hearing
Correct.
for January.
There's something else?
There's one more thing, and that is, how does the board want to handle the request that the town clerk tax collector brought to us?
Can I ask a question
On,
before we ask that
and
question?
she said that she was coming on behalf of the select board.
Well, that was my question, is who has the right to make this decision? I mean, if the planning board says, no, we don't want it,
I don't even think I know what the question
Okay,
is.
can I refresh everybody's
So I
memory?
think what she said was, it was the selectmen's decision, but they had asked for some feedback from the planning board.
that's
Not,
not.
no,
That's
that
not how I
wasn't, no, it
understood
wasn't for the planning articles. It
She
was-
brought it to the selectmen and said, we would like to reduce the wording in the articles.
Right.
And we said, let's go to the planning board and see what their feelings are on it. And my question is, planning board says tonight, no, we want everything to be in full length. Is that it, or can the selectmen, or say the selectmen say we want it full, can the planning board say, no, we want it?
Well, that should be, I thought that was something that Ellen was gonna research. There were two outstanding
Actually, I
researches.
thought that, Glenn, were you perhaps gonna be looking at that?
I gave, Tammy, thank you, God, examples from Brentwood of how Brentwood has dealt with it.
Right, we saw that, but my question is, who has the authority to decide whether it's actually done or not? Is it a planning board decision or a select?
Are all
So,
board
no,
members-
I don't know. So is it, when an article goes up, do you have to put the language of the entire
Right.
warrant regard, not just the
Or you want
changes,
synopsis.
or can you just?
Jamie wants to put the changes in and then do a little paragraph about the intent of the article.
The synopsis of the
Okay.
article.
So in other
Separately
words, it's
available documents.
I
on-site.
have an opinion on that, depending on which way we want to go.
On-site and posted, but the argument is most people don't read it anyway. And the few people that do read it, if we have it there so they can read it, it's legal.
So for example, when we put the new ADU unit, ADU
Yeah.
section in,
Yeah.
as an ADU, it would just be a paragraph synopsis of what it
Correct.
is.
That would be my preference, because if you put in a 2-page warrant article section,
They don't read it.
they will not read it.
And the bottom line on this is it's money.
Yeah.
It's money driving this because it's a tremendous amount of money to print all the extra ballots. It's also a hassle to insert them in the machine because
Yeah.
it starts rejecting more and more of them.
And I would say the only people that have actually read those long ones in their entirety, they've done it before they got to the ballot box.
Right,
If they were gonna read it.
and it would be available online.
But I would love them to have the description of it and then a synopsis of the intent. Because I think some things have voted over the years, because way stuff is worded, it almost thought by, well, if I vote this way, it was actually voting against something else, and there wasn't that clarity.
And we used to put a little thing under all the articles that explained it, and then they
Yeah.
said we couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was one of the things we were gonna research, was that, whether if we printed the full text, whether we're still allowed to put a summary or synopsis, small explanatory statement in there. And I thought that
We can put, I understand this, correct me, we can put a detail of what the article means, but we cannot say a yes vote means this, a no
Oh,
vote
I see,
means
yeah,
this.
that's it.
We can't guide them that thoroughly.
You can't guide them, that's correct.
And that's
You
what
can
they
do-
said we were doing with that
You can
before.
do a topical description.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the other issue that came up, and that was, I believe Ellen's concern, and I had the same one, and I think you did, was that you still are gonna need to have the exact text that's being amended in either the town report or in some place, because if you just print the ballot that was voted on, when you go back to research and say, what did we vote on, there'll be a short descriptive paragraph.
Oh, you're
That
talking,
would-
you're
that
talking
would
about
help
for the future.
for the future.
For historical
And legally for the changes. Does she see what was actually?
Uh-oh, hold it.
basically the text had to be available, in the town, had to be in the town report. So
Town
people wanted
report,
to
so
read
that
it.
would be there,
Which is fine.
Yeah.
and I think that got into discussion about the fact that the town report
That
was
does-
no longer distributed to everybody. It was only available if you came in, you know, to pay your taxes.
And online.
And
Except online, it gets really late. By the time they get that online, it is late. You don't have it prior to the, deliberative session, which is really tough, I think.
Yeah.
I
I think they
agree.
barely get it printed up in time. to put it in the session.
But even putting them online, I mean, we were looking to see who was running for office, like, 2 or 3 weeks after the end of, filing, and nobody knew. There was no way to find it out. It hadn't been posted, wasn't online, was nowhere. It's very discouraging.
Okay, so I just wanted to try to wrap it up because when Tammy left us at the end of the last
I had
meeting.
that on my list to bring up.
Oh,
Right,
What
and,
you're
and
doing.
Richard had made the suggestion last time that we wait to see how much verbiage was gonna be in this year's, and it looks, and I haven't seen the citizens petitions, but they have to be printed in their entirety anyway, but as far as our contributions,
Barely a page.
it's pretty minimal, and so, the other question that came up was whether we wanna put it as a vote. It was recommended that we put it to vote to the town, so that we didn't have the situation that you were talking about, where people are saying, oh, they're trying to hide something. You know, if we go ahead and implement this and say, yeah, trust us, this is what we're saying, you know, you can't read the text, but, you know, this is what it means. You get the whole, the people, you know, the people who think that the government's trying to hide stuff.
If we have a commitment from the Board of Selectmen that it will go, the full text will go in the annual report,
We just make that part of our motion.
I think that annual report should be the guidance that residents use as they go into town meeting vote. I mean, it gives all the information about the town's previous year's activity.
I
So
can't tell you how many
zoning-
times I go back into Old Town reports,
Oh,
20 years ago,
we
looking
do
for
it all the
something,
time.
yeah, constantly.
And once we're digitized, it'll be really easy.
Don't go crazy.
So,
Oh, it will be. So, I think you said that you do this for Brentwood, that you rewrite the articles or accordingly.
Yeah, I do it for Brentwood every year.
Congratulations.
So you want a motion to, I don't even know what we call it.
summarize.
Well, goes back to the original question, who has the authority to make that decision?
Well, I think.
And are we voting to make that decision, or are we voting
Recommending
to
it-
recommend to,
Why would I recommend that the selectmen
to
authorize
the
it?
authorized body?
I would say the selectmen probably have to authorize it.
I think so too, but I'm not sure.
But I think it wouldn't hurt to have, based off of the information we have at hand, that the planning board can vote on it, whether or not to recommend it to the selectmen to do it.
Okay. You tell me what we're
Or-
calling it.
or
I'll make a
affirming it.
motion. Edited version? It wouldn't be
Well,
edited.
What if you provide a
can-
synopsis in lieu of the full text for each article?
Is that a motion?
That is a motion. I make a
Second.
motion.
Actually, I'm not gonna second, being a select.
I'll second.
That's a good idea.
A topical description.
Because I think if you are gonna do a condensed, I think
That's it.
having the
Basic
synopsis is
terminology,
important, because
topical
I think that's a
description.
quick reference for people if they ever wanna go research the intent.
Yeah,
As
and
well.
probably an add to that would be full dialogue should be
Full
printed
text.
in the.
Full text.
Full text should be
Will it
printed
appear?
in the town report.
And placement made available to the public, and so forth and so
Well,
forth.
we know all that has to be done as
Right,
part of the.
so,
law.
so the term is, propose the adoption of an amendment of an ordinance, a topical discussion, topical description of the substance of the ordinance or amendment, and, in lieu of the,
Full
text.
text.
Full text.
So moved.
So that's your motion.
Seconded still.
Chris seconded it. Okay, further discussion.
And as you said, amended, and you said, the big
Yeah,
part of the
she said
motion that it'd be, in
Town
town
report.
report.
So, Robin, included in the motion is that the full text would be included in the town report.
Yes,
That's an additional item
yes, please.
on the motion. Right, Chris?
Great work.
So just so you know, I think that, I will probably vote no because I think that, the right course might have been better to ask the voters, just so that they don't think,
Still think that.
because it's a major change from what we have historically done, but I mean, I see the reasoning for doing the abridged version, and I have no argument with it, so,
Well, do you wanna perhaps
no, I don't.
make that the motion?
God, no.
No,
There's a
because
motion
that-
on the
that-
floor.
That would have to go to warrant this year before we can implement it next year,
Right.
if you wanted to go that route.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Which,
But this
And-
year,
But this year's such a small amount of stuff anyway,
Yeah.
this would be the year to put it as a warrant article. The question, do you want to have a description in lieu of full text? And then we.
You could still put that in there.
I've been told I couldn't petition warrant article that it shows our vote on supportive articles.
you know, I think I think it makes sense when you're talking about this, about asking the town what they want, what the townspeople wanna do, what the voters wanna do, they're the people that vote on it. And certainly
And
this
they're
year,
the ones who pay for,
yeah, they wanna pay for the whole text. And this year, I think we've only got, what, maybe 2 pages?
Yeah.
Tops of articles, so that, you know, it's not gonna cost much money this year.
Right,
If
it's
we
not
wanna
close to
ask
tomorrow.
people next year. I mean, just looking at what we've got in front of us,
That's,
maybe 3-4 pages.
that's the conclusion I thought we had reached
Yeah.
last
We're
time.
also not done.
Yeah, but even if done, maybe, 3 or 4 pages.
But we
we're
could
not
also
talking-
do it this year and put in the question, would you like this in the future or not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We have a motion.
yeah.
Okay.
We do have a motion on the floor, and I was just sort of adding my own thoughts and further discussion, so that's all. All right, ready for the vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Next year.
I'm opposed, and abstentions. None. So motion carries, 5 in favor, 2 opposed, and no abstentions.
And if maybe a suggestion to the selectmen that they put a warrant article in to ask the townspeople what they think of the new
Yeah.
system.
Yep.
Question.
Did you like this, yes or no?
Didn't read it.
Okay, any other business? Glenn, you have anything for us, any miscellaneous things?
I do not.
All of our new fees go into effect January 1st. We only changed really the ones that we were losing money on or that we needed to clarify and expand. We did add a dumpster fee that I think is $10. It was more just to put a time frame on how long a dumpster could be on a property and what the purpose of it was. Main thing we did too is like a shed permit now says, will there be electrical, will there be plumbing, what's the intent of the shed? Will there be heating and air conditioning? Because we've got people that are building sheds and then using them for offices, or one lady runs a massage business out of one stores a car in one, so we're trying to find out, so it's taxed properly, that type of thing. Some of the stuff we cleared up. Everything else, some of them went up drastically, some of them went up very little. And we put fees and fines could be up to 4 times the amount of the permit fee, so we'll get the people that are not pulling permits.
Any update on code enforcement officer?
No. Anybody that knows anybody that might be interested or good at it, or we were working, we had something going that may work out, but we have another person in town that works for the town that may be interested in taking it.
Okay.
But other towns are paying a lot more for the same job, so,
Anything else?
no.
Ready for a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Stop doing that.
Motion and seconded and carried. It's 8:15 and we are adjourned.